Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. This is a podcast to inspire, uplift, show forth the love of God, and help usher in the spiritual awakening. Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay. I'm your host, Jay Spillers. Please do like, subscribe, and share everywhere. So I have a guest today. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Deva Neely. I am a Canadian living abroad in the Caribbean, and I'm happy to join you today.
Yeah, it's good to have you too. So, did you have a spiritually transformative experience?
Yes, well, I've had many,
Hmm.
but yes, I've had an incredible experience, and one wouldn't think that the experience I had would come from extreme tragedy, but it's often the case. I lost my brother to suicide in 2013. And it completely annihilated the life that I knew. Everything stopped for me in that instant. And it was a long road of healing to try and understand what had happened, to try and put pieces back together. But it also forced me to look inwards, which was not fun. Um, and I was fortunate enough to have incredible support around me. And it was probably a good 7 years of me dealing with severe PTSD symptoms, including suicidal ideation myself. And there was a paradigm shift that happened in that time that really shifted everything for me. I was part of many support groups, but this one in particular, I was reading through some of the comments and somebody had asked the question, how long have y'all been dealing with PTSD? And I skimmed through the answers, and one lady wrote 43 years and counting. And I knew in that instant that that could not be my story. I would not survive that. And I made a decision in that moment that I would do anything and everything I could to heal. And that's what I did. I set out on this road of literally trying anything and everything. I went to yoga, I went to meditation classes, I did a course on angels, I did my Reiki level 1 to, if for no other reason, to try and heal my own energy. And so I was really trying everything I could think of to heal. And so in that process, many times people have asked me, well, what worked? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what it was that worked. I think all of it worked to some level, but I think it was the mindset shift for me in deciding that I couldn't live that way anymore and just setting out on that task for myself. And in that process, as often happens when we start looking inwards and we start self-care, right? And we start mindfulness practices and we start doing all those things, that was when my reconnection to spirit happened. And I had moved from a metropolitan city back to my very small hometown. I was reconnected to my brother in a lot of ways in doing that. So there was a lot of good memories that were coming back to me. There was a lot of reconnection I felt with my brother in that time. Just because I was having such pleasant memories, which after so many years of such negativity and such horror that we went through, it was really nice to sort of tap back into that inner child. And it was in that time that my brother started to communicate with me as well. And I think he had tried many times previously. I had had many experiences of strangers stopping me and telling me, you know, your brother is insistent that you know he's here. And it was very shocking to me at the time, and I wasn't sure how to process that information, but it happened multiple times. So at this point, he was communicating with me directly, and I could audibly hear him in my ear, shouting in my ear. And to understand a bit of my brother, he's a bit of a jackass in life. So why would that be different in spirit? So he would do it purposely at a time that would startle me. And for a long time, I passed it off as, either just a desire or a coincidence or, whatever excuse I made up at the time. But it happened so frequently, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I started talking back to him. And that's when dialogue started to happen. And it was very healing for me because I got some answers. I was able to put some pieces of that puzzle together. I was able to ask questions and get answers about what happens when we die, when he died specifically. And I started reconnecting with my spirit team at that time as well. And what I was realizing is I was reconnecting to something I was able to do as a child. I saw and spoke to spirits as a child, my whole childhood. And so it all sort of came full circle in that time. And then it opened up to other spirits coming to me and me talking to, well, spirits in general, and learning to have to set boundaries and learning to have to navigate, this world and that world. And now I say my brother's death saved my life.
Mhm. Do you hear him like audibly, or is it just like more of an internal, knowing?
I used to hear him audibly and clear as I'm speaking to you. And his voice in my ear, I knew it was him. There was no question. Um, but that has since shifted. I don't hear, I occasionally I get the occasional audible response, but I mostly communicate with images now. Spirit sends me images and I have to try and decipher what those images mean or put those pieces together with the help of whoever I'm reading for at the time. And it's forever evolving. It's forever changing. Just when I think I have a grasp on how things work for me, things shift. So I never assume to know that I got it all figured out.
Well, so do you go like in a meditative state, or is it just like your regular conscious state and you're talking to him?
For me now, it's in a regular state. I used to have to do a lot of pre-work to sort of get into that state for communication, and I do some to prepare when I do readings, but it's not as extensive as I used to be. Um, Now it comes very easily to me, and it can be instantaneous. So that's where I've had to learn to set boundaries because it can be overwhelming for me, especially in certain spaces. Like hospitals are very overwhelming to me because so many spirits come through to me, and it creates a huge amount of anxiety in me because I mean hospitals generally create anxiety for people just regularly, and then top that off with all these spirits wanting me to pass along messages. It can be overwhelming. So I've had to learn how to set, like I said, set some boundaries of when I'm open to receive and when that door is closed.
What does it happen like when you go to cemeteries or funerals too?
No, not as much as people would think. And the reason is spirits they don't hang out at the cemetery. Now, would I want to walk through a cemetery at night? No, thank you. I watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't want to experience any of that. But generally, cemeteries are quite peaceful for me. The only spirits that really come to a cemetery is when they follow us there.
Hmm.
So
Well,
it's not like they hang out there. That's why for me, hospitals, nursing homes, sometimes funeral homes, sometimes.
I've heard like sometimes when you go to a funeral that the departed person shows up to, kind of like say his last goodbyes or her last goodbyes to the people that are at the funeral. They're kind of observing what's going on.
Sometimes. Yep. And that is true of any big family event, though. I've been to many weddings where spirits show up just to let it be known that they're present, they're there, they see what's going on. So no different for a funeral as well. Um, Although they're they're not as interested in a funeral as we may think. I think on a human perspective, we're like, oh, I want to see who shows up at my funeral, or, we're curious of what that would look like. Spirits aren't so much.
Now, I did have one experience when I was at my dad's funeral that I was kind of nervous and everything because I was giving the eulogy, and I kind of felt like he said everything's going to be fine, you'll be fine. Then I kind of relaxed a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I
And
had
that's because he was there for
yeah, go ahead.
he was there for you. He was there supporting you, not necessarily to be present at the funeral. It was because spirit has this innate desire to be there for us, to help us in whatever endeavors we're pursuing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there for you. He was there supporting you.
So, like in terms of your brother passing, and you said you got information about like his experience going into the afterlife, what was that like for him?
He made sure to let me know that it was instant
Mm.
and he was not alone. So I mean, I knew how it happened because I had to sit and listen to the police report. It had to be investigated, and so we had to sit and listen to the play-by-play. So I had a lot of questions even surrounding that, and for a long time that haunted me. And in connecting with my brother and asking him those questions, because for me it was heartbreaking to think he was alone and he must have been scared and desperate at that point, or to make that drastic of a decision that he made. But he said it was very instant. He was there, he was on the other side. It was an instant transition. And my grandmother was there to meet him. And it was immediate. She was there with him. And that checks out because my grandmother has come to me multiple times to let me know when she's there for somebody. I mean, I knew my dad was going to pass a few years ago because my grandmother told me she was there to get him. So when I got the information from my brother that my grandmother, and I've had other mediums confirm that as well, that made sense to me. And my brother said it was instant love. It was instant relief for him. And, that also checks out based on conversations I've had with other spirits and readings I've done for strangers,
Mm-hmm. Well, I know like from near-death
right? It's
experiences, there's like a lot of love and forgiveness and everything. But sometimes there's the message
yeah,
that, well, you still have to work through these issues, and maybe it'll be in another lifetime, maybe it'll be here, and something like that. Did he have to work through issues there? Or is he going to have another life where he works through issues?
absolutely. We all do. And here's the thing is when we transition, we go through an evaluation stage. And so I liken it to kind of what people know based on what the church has always told us. They call it Judgment Day, but it has nothing to do with judgment. It has everything to do with us as spirit evaluate our time in human form. What did we achieve? What are the things that we still need to work on? Because we set course to creating a new soul contract for when we reincarnate. So the things that we didn't quite achieve, or the things that we still need to learn that we didn't in this life, we set course to do it again with those things in focus. We
Mhm.
focus on the things that we feel we missed.
Well, yeah.
So
Oh, go ahead.
oftentimes I explain to people, and this is based on information my spirit team has presented to me, is we can feel this incredible void when somebody passes and we feel like they're not around. And sometimes that is true. They're in that evaluation stage and they're figuring out, right? Because we still have to let go of that essence of our human form to then transition fully into spirit form. And that can take time, essentially, even though time, I use time very loosely because there is no concept of time on the other side. But they do that evaluation period. So in that time, or that what we think is judgment day, even though there's no judgment, it's really just a self-evaluation of looking back on all the things that they achieved and the things that they still want to work on for next time. And they start putting that together.
Have you ever wondered whether the Bible was compatible with a near-death experience? In my book, Heaven's Truth, the parallels between the Bible and the near-death experience, your faith will be strengthened while you support this channel. In Heaven's Truth, you will learn about near-death experiences and other similar experiences in the Bible. Support for the Bible contained in NDEs, a central theme that runs through both the Bible and NDEs, how the NDE brings the Bible to life for these modern times, evidence for both the Bible and the NDE, and much more. Great book. Spillers does an excellent job weaving the relationship between NDEs and the scriptures. 5 stars on Amazon, available on Amazon. Like the life review, like what NDEers call the life review. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you judge
that's
yourself.
exactly what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes, very much so.
Well, so do you think
So
like,
yeah, my brother had to do a lot of that.
Mhm. But do you think like when someone goes to hell that it's just a state of where their soul is, and that it's sort of it's a process you got to work through, like a purgatory more, but it's not like an endless eternal state.
Yes. I think you hit it exactly. It's what we know as purgatory, right? It's that in between stage. And to my understanding, there's not really a heaven and a hell like people think there is. It's really a state of consciousness. And heaven, Spirit has actually told me multiple times that we call it going home. We go home, and it's that feeling of going home, right? And it's a place of love. It's a place of comfort. It's a place where we all exist together. And there isn't hell the way we think it is. And I know some people get very upset about that, especially when they think of, some historical figures who have done inhumane atrocities. They have to atone for their behavior in human form, and they have to do that evaluation, and they have to figure out what is next in their life. We are all in a process of learning. We are all in a process to reach these enlightened states of consciousness. And to do so, we have to start somewhere. And so my understanding is that those kinds of people who commit these atrocities, they're very early in their process. They're not evolved. They're at the starting point, and they have a long way to go, many reincarnations before they learn the valuable lessons that they need to.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like during the life review, even though you're not judged by God, you see and feel what your actions caused to other people as they experienced it. You know what I mean? So it's like when you think about Hitler or Stalin, that's a pretty heavy thing, to experience what they caused to others.
Yes, absolutely. Right. And I don't want people to think that they get off scot-free, because I think that's the interpretation. There's a process that spirit goes through to heal and to have a deeper understanding of their actions in human form, because when we are in our human form, we have free will. We make choices. We can become separate from our spiritual being. And it's goes into this whole psychology of the ego and the id and all these things that, we've heard throughout time. And so we make choices as a human that doesn't necessarily align with who we are spiritually as spirit beings.
Mm-hmm. So, like, what does he
So
do
we
in
have
the
to
after?
understand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just saying we have to understand that there can be that disconnect. And we all experience that. We all feel out of alignment. Something doesn't feel right, or something doesn't feel like what we know intrinsically we should be doing, right? It's that intuition we have.
It's kind of we need to align ourselves with that authentic self, is what it's called sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's tapping into the root of who we are. That is our spirit essence. That is our soul.
So, like, what does your brother do in the afterlife? Because I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. You can do hobbies, work, school. You can do recreational things. What does he like to do in the afterlife?
He likes to torture me. And I say that tongue in cheek. And the reason I say that is because he shows up everywhere I am, and I'm very grateful for that. But sometimes it can be a little baffling. I have some other friends who are mediums who teach other mediums, and I volunteered while they're learning to do it. And he often will bombard and hijack other people's readings just to come in, say hi, and leave. That's very common. I've had friends who've messaged me saying, I think your brother's here with my mediumship class. Um, so, he's a prankster just the same as he was in human form. He's still that prankster. But a lot of what he does is looking after us. He's part of my spirit team. So he is one who gives me information that I need when I'm doing a reading or I'm asked questions. So he is one of the spirits who regularly helps me with what I do.
Hmm. It's almost like your guardian angel.
He is, yeah. Yeah, he is definitely one of my spirit guides. And I know he is for my niece as well, his daughter.
Mhm. Do you have you said you have other guides too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a whole team. We all do. We all have spirit teams, right? My guardian angel is actually my my twin, which I didn't even know I was a twin until about 10 years ago. But I have had a relationship with her since I was young. My earliest memory is telling my mom about this girl who exists up in my playroom. And she looks just like me. She talks just like me, but we live in different worlds. And I was explaining quantum physics to my mom about how when I'm asleep, she's awake in my dreams. And when she's asleep, I'm awake in her dreams. And we coexist as connected beings. So my mom is listening to her 4-year-old explain this to her, not knowing what to say, and then just said, "Oh, you have an imaginary friend." And I thought, she's not imaginary, she's upstairs, right? And she's always been with me. I've always known her to be with me. But it wasn't until about 10 years ago, and I overheard my mom talking to somebody about when she was pregnant with me and about the doctor hearing 2 heartbeats. And my mom almost had a heart attack because she didn't know it was her first child. She said, "What was I going to do with twins?" She goes, "I didn't even know how to have one child, let alone two." And I stopped the conversation because all of a sudden my entire life made sense. It explained my fascination with twins. It explained, I always felt if I were to have kids that I would have twins. I just always felt this connectedness to twins and feeling like she was my twin soul. And that's how I would explain her to people. Well, it's because she is my twin soul. She is my twin.
Hmm. Did she just pass in utero or?
She did. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So a lot of my life made sense after I found that out.
Hmm. So, what is the work you do now? I think you do something with grief, don't you?
I do. Um, and I just recently pivoted. As much as I love doing readings and I love that aspect, part of me really wanted to feel like I was making a difference. And I know what it's like to be stuck in grief. I know what that feels like and how isolating that can feel. And it was really something I thought over for a long time. And it just felt right. Again, it felt in alignment with who I am. So my goal is to create community for people so that they don't feel so isolated and they do understand that there are other people who are going through it as well and who understand exactly what they're going through, and they have somewhere to go in those moments feeling like they're out of control or they don't have answers, and they've got a community of people, and I want to be the person who guides them through that. And in part of what I do is helping people understand that death is not a finality, that our relationships can be maintained even after somebody transitions. And it's about reestablishing that relationship. It looks different because they're not in physical form, but we can still maintain that relationship. And so that's my focus, is to help people tap in to their own intuitive abilities themselves, because we all have the ability, and to reestablish and maintain those relationships.
Does that sort of involve getting the person to maybe start meditating and just focusing on the other person and seeing if they can hear?
Some of it, and some of it is, initially is me guiding them through that and guiding them through those visualizations and those meditations to make those connections, and just getting people to see that the possibility is there. And a lot of what I do in helping people through grief is through doing mindfulness activities, because those are things that we need to do to help us recenter, rebalance, and feel like we have some semblance of control when we feel completely out of control. And so that very naturally starts to happen when we focus on self and when we focus on doing those mindfulness activities. We start to naturally tap into those intuitive abilities. So it's helping people stay focused in that.
Hmm. How long have you been doing this work?
Just this year, I pivoted to this. So I'm just starting to launch stuff in this regard and getting the word out, which is why I like speaking on podcasts and doing shows like yours. I want people to understand that the possibility is there for everyone, right? And that they don't have to feel so alone. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing readings and mediumship for many years. It's just this year that I started to pivot, really wanting to focus on helping people through their grief journey.
So, do you do mostly in person or online, virtual?
Both, both, whatever works. If people are in the area, I'm happy to do an in-person. I do a lot of online. I have a lot of clients who live all over the world. And I'm just launching a membership, which is online, but it allows us to meet live on Zoom calls every week to work through grief and to ask questions and to do exercises together. And that's bringing people together from all over the world. Like I said, my goal is to create a community. So that's where I'm starting.
Hmm. So, do you still miss your brother even though you can talk to him? Is it not still quite the same, not having the physical presence?
I absolutely miss him, right? I don't think that will ever change. But where things did change when I reconnected spirit, like with his spirit, and started tapping into my intuitive abilities again, what changed for me is it was very healing for me to reconnect. And I think my relationship with him in spirit is even better than it was in human form, right? There was a lot of difficulties when he was in human form. His death forced me to look back on our childhood and recognize things that were dysfunctional and abusive, and the trauma that we both endured, and realizing that we both coped very differently. My brother turned to drugs and alcohol as his coping mechanism. I turned into a workaholic and I dove into my work. That was my way of avoiding. So this is why I say his death saved my life, because it really forced me to look back. And so I'm so grateful for that. I'm grateful to him, and that he didn't just abandon me and force me to do it myself. I know he's been there trying to shift and guide me so that I could get what he never did. And so I feel, yeah, I do miss him. I do miss his presence. But when I miss him, I just ask him and he comes. And I'll tell you a story. Just recently, I was having a problem making a decision, and there was a lot of upheaval in my life. And I said to him, you know what? I need you to show me that everything is going to be okay. Give me a sign and let me know that this is all going to work out. And not even an hour later, one of his best friends reached out to me, sent me a message, and I hadn't spoken to this guy since my brother's funeral. And his message to me was, I'm really missing him right now. And I thought, thank you, Brent. Right? I knew that was my sign from my brother. Because not even an hour later, I could not have predicted that. That would not be the sign I would have expected. But I asked my brother, send me a sign so that I know that everything is going to be okay. And so I ended up having an hour conversation with him. He ended up calling me, and we talked about the trauma and the hurt and the missing him. But then we started telling funny stories, and he had stories that I didn't know about, and I, of course, as his sister, had stories that his friends didn't know about. And so it was this really beautiful conversation we both needed in that moment.
So it's like you've always had a spiritual portal where you could see or understand, hear from people on the other side, but it's sort of like it got reconnected when you changed your mindset 7 years later.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we can often disconnect when we endure trauma or we endure hardship. We get so tunnel visioned and focused on trying to we go into survival mode. And I think that's where I was. And so in that shift, that mindset shift and that paradigm shift that happened, it forced me to be mindful. It forced me to go inwards. It forced me to just sit and listen. And, it started to open those channels again. So my goal is to help other people recognize that for themselves. I think it's important.
Well, so do you feel like you're able to like communicate with God directly or your higher self as well?
I
Or
think we all do. I think we all do. We all have the ability. I think we all have that direct line, so to speak. And I mean, there's so many prophets that have spoken of the I am, right? That we are God, so to speak. And that just means we are tapped into that source energy. We are that energy. And so I think we all have that ability to tap in. And we know it. That's the thing. We have all had experiences, and I challenge anybody to refute this. We have all had experiences like we have felt like there is something greater in the universe. greater than ourselves, right? We've all had some miracle happen, or we've all experienced something, this overwhelming feeling of love, adoration, gratitude, for experiencing, seeing, a meteor shower, or seeing these amazing things in life. And so I challenge anybody to tell me that they haven't had an experience where they didn't feel tapped into that energy, and whatever they want to call it, God, source energy, the universe, whatever. To me, that's a label, and we don't need to label it. But I think we all know what that connection feels like to some degree.
Mm-hmm. So is there like one final word you like to leave with Jans before we close?
Yeah, just a reminder that we all have the ability to tap in, and spirit desperately wants us to. So as a reminder to everybody, you all have a spirit team. And if there's one message I get constantly when doing readings, is they want me to remind everybody that they exist, but they cannot do anything for us if we don't ask. They cannot interrupt free will. So they want us to actively engage our spirit team to do whatever we need, right? I ask my spirit team all the time, give me guidance, give me support, give me courage, give me energy, help me through this. And use them. They're bored, essentially. We've got a bunch of spirits everywhere who are bored. So use your spirit team, ask them for help, and start to see things shift in your life when you do.
So where can people reach out to you if they want to get in touch with you?
I'm on all the socials, so you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook under Deva Neely. And my website, which I think did I give you the thing to put in my I can't speak. The link for my website?
I don't think so. You can send it in a message to me, or
Sure. I'll send you the link, because that'll tap you into everything. All the links, even to all my socials, are on that website. Or you can email me at griefreliefwithdeva@gmail.com.
okay. Well, thanks for coming on today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I love this time together and having conversations like these.
Have you ever wanted to learn to meditate? Check out my book, Meditation for Everyone: How to Quickly Have a More Peaceful, Mindful, and Fulfilled Life, and support this channel. With Meditation for Everyone, you will learn to quickly and easily meditate, relieve stress and anxiety, alleviate depression, and have more joy, peace, and relaxation. What you will learn: mindfulness, the art of stillness, step by step on how to meditate, strategies for overcoming challenges to meditation, and much more. D. Mason said this is a nice meditation book, even for those already meditating. I agree with the statements that it will help to have a more peaceful, mindful, and fulfilled life. 4.6 star rating, available on Amazon.